Hi, my name is Indranil and I'm with the Bull Events. We're managing the CREDAI New India Summit in Varanasi 2024, and I'm excited to be able to have a conversation with Mr. Sandeep Roy, who's a Senior Vice President and Head of Engineering and Design at DLF. So we've been hearing a lot about sustainability. We've been hearing a lot about building information modeling today around the sessions, and was, heartwarming to listen to all of that. But one of the lacunas of the industry has been uptake and, access to these technologies, because there's a lack of knowledge in the MSME sector. How can we bridge that? And what are some of the key, takeaways that you had from the conference today?
Yeah, I mentioned this, that I think the first step everybody has to take is get on this BIM platform. BIM creates that base on which there is a whole ecosystem of additional things that you are getting. So one of the questions that we were debating inside and outside is that what does it take for a developer to get onto this boat? I mean, that's the very first question. I mean, somebody is new there. So I would say that there are three issues. Number one, every developer has to understand what are their pain points in the existing process. What is working and what is not working? Simply because that one has to understand BIM does not give you a sale advantage. Nobody is going to give you any extra cost for your product, extra sale price for your product because it was designed on BIM. No, that's not going to happen. What BIM does, gives you an advantage on your cost side, that when you become more efficient in your delivery processes, you do it quickly, you do it correctly, do it right the first time. That is when you get the advantage, and that is when the profit starts increasing. So that's the issue. So which basically means to get on the BIM boat that I call, the first thing that the developer has to realize is that he has to understand what is his process deficiencies or inefficiencies, deficiencies, what is going wrong in his process. Yeah. Market gives him the price what it does to some extent, and then the specifications and all. So that's point number one. Point number two, another issue that kept on coming over there was how much is it going to cost? And on that, I have two takes. Number one is that there are a few different models in which models of or structure of consultants that you can implement a BIM. There will be a slight difference in that. For example, you can just go ahead and do every project like you are doing with a 2D system. Then you give it a halt, you give it to a BIM consultant who does the modeling, who identifies clashes and changes, who tells you all the other thing I was talking about is the quantities and the quantities of materials accurate, and you give it back to our 2D consultant team, and then they do it. Another model that we have been trying very, very much, or we are doing in DLF, is that we are telling that natively you have to get the consultant to work on Revit. So, right? And in that case, we appoint this third-party BIM consultant merely as an auditor. So they are the auditors who are that central point of contacts, and they just audit that the BIM models are being done to our specification. DLF has the specifications, which brings me, and these models actually make a little difference in cost. End of the day, the developer, mind you, doesn't spend anything. We don't need to buy Revit. We are not designing, right? It is the consultants, and we only pay them an X up on it. So that's the number of man hours based on that. So there is a little difference on that. And the third issue that affects the cost is what we call LODs, the level of detail of the BIM. Now there are actually 7 defined levels of BIM. And it goes like this. BIM 3D is basically making the model in 3D and doing a clash detection. When you put in scheduling information into the model, then it becomes level 4. When you put in cost information, it becomes level 5. When you bring in sustainability information, it's level 6. And level 7 is asset management information, right? So it is again a requirement of the developer has to define that what level he wants to take the BIM model to, and that will also impact the cost a little bit. Now, this discussion ends here, but I can't stop but point out one more thing. An advantage of LOD 7 is what it does. It takes your building model right up to the asset management stage. So if you are managing the building also, this is where we call digital twinning. At some point, we take a model and build the building based on the model. And once the building is done and the model exists, which is absolute replica of the building, then there are systems now where the building starts talking back to the model, which basically means you can sit in your control room and you can monitor every electrical system, every security system that in your building, wherever it is in the world and wherever your control room is, it doesn't matter. So now the models start talking to each other. So whether you go to LOD 7 or not, these are the criteria. So for example, if you're not managing most of your building and you are simply selling it off, fine. There is absolutely no issue with that.
Which I wanted to ask you, and this is basically based on the feedback that we've been getting, is that one of the reasons why adoption of digital twins in general has been scarce till now in every single sector is basically because of lack of knowledge around that, right?
Correct.
If an organization wants to implement this, just not for a technology perspective, but also for the cost, advantage perspective, what would be the typical roadmap if somebody?
I'll correct it in one point. It's not just MSME. Even it's been there about a 10-year-old technology, right? Even the large enterprises were not adopting it like it should have. Sure. And the reason is the maximum success of BIM will only come if the whole ecosystem is using it.
Definitely.
If only the architect is using it, then you can't go anything beyond LOD 3D or something. So that took some time to be adopted, right? Now but this process has to be driven by the developers, which is why I made this presentation today here, that it's not just the large scale guys. Everybody, if they understand that they have a need for BIM, then this understanding will grow, number one. And number two, the entire ecosystem will start coming off. I gave the example of this door lock manufacturer. Yes. The problem is BIM is, the best BIM models will have everything built in, from the tap to the door lock to the eyepiece in this. So if our, I don't know whether we should say that, but there is a sponsor called Dorset, for example.
Yes.
They have 200 different items, right? They only have to make 200 models, which will not cost them anything more than 5-10 lakh rupees, which is peanuts for them. And they have to put it up in the public domain for free. So just imagine that if now all the vendors, all the contractors, and all the consultants, including the architects, MEPs, structural, and there are like 20 consultants, if all of them start coming into this boat, then the system will start actually going. It will be a successful system. That's what I'm saying. What was happening is that entire ecosystem adaptation was not happening for a long time, or it was a slow takeoff because the developers were not pushing it. We had to push it. But now, even in Bangalore, Bombay, in Delhi, most of the developers, and we are a part of something called Indian Construction Council, DLF is a part of it. And I know that we are all interested and we are all doing it, and we are all pushing our contractors or consultants, telling them, I will only give you a job if you are on BIM. Sure. If you're not, I won't give you a job. Sure. And then they are also, so that is how our push. See, the owners are always the patrons, right? Shah Jahan didn't actually build Taj Mahal, somebody else built, but we call it Shah Jahan's building. So as an owner, the developers have to take this responsibility and they have to give the push, which is why I made this presentation. And I would like to have any more chat with anybody else if that makes life easy, because the important thing here is to get this ecosystem going at every level.
Absolutely.
Then only this will be a success.
Definitely. So one last question, and how was your overall experience at the summit at Varanasi, at the convention in general?
Firstly, I was extremely impressed with the hospitality and the organization. Every bit, from when they approached me in Delhi to buying tickets to booking things to landing in this, everything was so smooth. I have to thank whoever the logistic partners are and CREDAI and everybody. It was brilliantly organized. Especially impressive was today morning's darshan, because I know 500 people going there and the chaos that was happening, but it somehow worked out nicely. Brilliant, guys. So that's number one. The discussions were reasonably very high grade discussions. I enjoyed quite a few sessions, and there's still a few left. I'm looking forward to that.
So thank you very much for your time.
Yeah,
Sir. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Same.